Okay, so there's 34 minutes left on this SD card.
Okay.
So I'm gonna start a timer for 25 minutes. And we're rolling.
These pillows are so freaking cute.
I think they're cute too. Andrea thinks they're ugly.
Andrea is also an interior designer, so she just knows all.
That's true. I love her.
She's hilarious.
Okay. Welcome back to Life with Purpose podcast. I'm Amanda.
I'm Kat.
And today we're continuing our conversation on friend breakups. Last week we talked about Kat and her friend breakup, and this week we're talking about a friendship breakup that I recently went through. Your friendship breakup was a shorter friendship, right? You guys had only been friends for...
One of them I had been friends for actually over 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
and the other I had been friends with for about 3 years.
And this friend breakup, had I still been friends with them this year, it would have been about 14 or 15 years if we were still friends. Yeah, we'll just jump directly into it. I think, so one of the things that I want to preface is that I have 2 rules when it comes to friendships. The first rule is that there's a stark difference between venting and talking shit. And that difference is that if you're talking shit, you're unwilling to say that whatever you're saying to their face. If you're willing to say to their face, then it's just venting. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that no one deserves your first draft. And this is a rule that I truly live by. So, like, for example, if you and I were fighting and I went to a mutual friend and I was like, Kat was being such a bitch and I'm so upset with her and, like, I just can't fucking handle her right now. And then I turned around and had that conversation. I wouldn't be like, you were being a bitch. I would just be like, I really didn't appreciate the way that you were behaving. And I think that's okay. I think that when we are venting about things, we have a tendency to do what I call the first draft, and we give like a more visceral reaction, how we're like feeling in the moment. And so if people are having that conversation later and they're like, but they told you that they were mad at you, well, they told me you were a bitch. Like, in my head, I would just go, that's probably their first draft.
Yeah.
So those are my 2 rules of friendship, and I, to the best of my knowledge, stick to them 100% every time, as much as you can.
Yeah.
And so those are important to this story. But my friendship started in college, and this person was actually my RA when I lived in the dorms. If you don't know what that is, it's your resident assistant, and it's kind of like the person who just oversees the floor, and they're kind of like a mentor to you. We do have that topic, I forgot. Yeah, we could do an episode on RA stories.
Jesus, yeah, we do.
So this person was my RA, and we actually became close because 3 months into me attending college, my mom passed away, and she was kind of the first person that I saw, and so the first person that I told, and, you know, we really kind of bonded. She let me come into her room and, like, use her very fancy oil paints and, like, paint something and, like, take my mind off of it, and, you know, she was a big support to me. And there was 2 other girls on the same floor that we became friends with, and so it was, like, the 4 of us. We were, like, the 4 musketeers, and, after that year was over, after my freshman year of college, the 3 of them moved into an apartment, and I became an RA, and then later joined a sorority. And so, like, we were still close, but the 3 of them were closer. So fast forward, I got engaged and was gearing up to get married, and I asked this person, we'll call her Morgan. I asked Morgan to be one of my bridesmaids, and I was really excited for that. And things just kind of were stressful because I had kind of been noticing, like, changes in our friendship anyways. Morgan lives, yep, that camera just died.
Okay.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Morgan lives several hours away, and the only time I ever saw her was if I was going down to see her. She very rarely came up to this area to see me, and I kind of knew that. But also throughout the course of my engagement, Morgan kept telling me how stressful my wedding was for her, and that really bothered me. There were a couple instances where she did things that I felt kind of like, I want to say stabbed, but that seems really aggressive, but like stabbed by. Mm-hmm. I had asked her to, she's an artist, I had asked her to commission a little sign for my bar for my wedding, and I wanted like 2 little portraits of my dogs, and like the dogs were going to be the names of the drinks we served at the wedding. And I'm sure like everybody has seen those on, oh God, I thought that wasn't recording for a second. I had seen these on like on Etsy or whatever, and I asked her to commission one for me, and she said no because she didn't enjoy drawing pets, which was fine. I appreciate that answer, and if it's not something that you enjoy doing, then don't do it. But then a few months later for Christmas, she opened up commissions to like everyone on, like she put a post up on Facebook and on Instagram and stuff that she was opening up pet portraits for Christmas so that she could make some money for Christmas. And so there were like little things like this that like kind of like.
Did she never like go back and was like, hey, I'm actually opening this up, so like.
No, and like never addressed it, and I didn't say anything. Maybe I should have, but. And then was having my bachelorette party out of state. And I know it's a lot to ask when you ask your bridesmaids to go out of state for your bachelorette party. And I knew that. And she was struggling with money at the time. Several times offered to help pay for it because I really wanted her there. Yeah. And she would say like, no, it's okay. I'll save up the money. Over and over and over, she kept telling me how stressful it was for her to come up with the money. And I was like, it's okay. I don't want this to be a stressful thing for you. I want it to be fun. It's my bachelorette party. Like, let me help kind of a thing. But then she would text me and be like, I saved this so much so far. And I was like, yeah, that's awesome, you know. Mm-hmm. But when the bachelorette party came around, she spent the entire weekend talking about, so she had another friend. We went to Florida. She had another friend who lived in the area. And so my bachelorette party was Friday through Sunday. Then she was going to go visit this other friend for the rest of the week. And she spent the entire weekend talking about how excited she was to go see that friend. And I really felt like it kind of like detracted from like the excitement of being there for my bachelorette party.
Right.
And that kind of made me sad. And then like kind of like the last thing is that when the wedding finally came around, like I had rented an Airbnb for my bridal party, and like you were there. She didn't stay at the Airbnb with us. She stayed somewhere else, and like she didn't come back to the after party, and she didn't stay the night before. She did stop by, but it kind of just hurt my feelings that like it just the entire time I was like going through the process of getting married, it seemed like she was either stressed out or like unenthused by it, and that really kind of hurt my feelings. So then there's a little more backstory is that the two friends I had mentioned earlier, how we were like the four musketeers, this friend Morgan had always said, when or if I ever get married, I am not going to have any friends as my bridesmaids because I have so many sisters. And she does. And that made sense to me, and you know, but it was kind of always one of those things, but if I would have bridesmaids, like you guys would be bridesmaids kind of a thing. And so like, she thought of a different way to incorporate us into her wedding. So she also got engaged shortly after I did, and so she was getting married shortly after I was. And so she at first said, you know, same thing, like I'm gonna ask my sisters to be my bridesmaids. Well, then she in the meantime had met two other friends and also asked those friends to be bridesmaids. Which hurts. Yeah. And I have to admit there was jealousy there.
Of course.
I
can't say I wouldn't be jealous.
Another thing that, she asked me, so what she had asked me, I just lost a nail. What she had asked me was to be her something blue. And that was an idea she had gotten from my wedding that, like, I felt like there were a couple friends that I couldn't ask to be bridesmaids. And so I asked them to be my something blue. And I gave them, like, small blue trinkets. And so she took that idea and ran with it. Had asked me to be her something blue. But still, like, there was a little like pang of jealousy. And that's another thing is like one thing that I say about jealousy is that jealousy is okay to feel. It's a perfectly human emotion that we tend to villainize. And I think the difference is that there's a difference between feeling jealousy and acting on jealousy. Yes. And that really kind of is what makes the situation right or wrong. I truly felt like I was hiding my jealousy, and you know, she did mention it later, and maybe I wasn't doing a good job, and I'll completely own up to that. I truly felt like I was trying to hide my jealousy. Mm-hmm. So anyways, my wedding's over. I am feeling frustrated with her because of all of these things that happened during my wedding, like the thing about the pet portraits and, you know, my bachelorette party, and like feeling like she just
not being there.
Yeah, just feeling like she just wasn't excited. And like even if you look at my wedding photos, every single photo that she's in, she has this look on her face, and she just looks like she doesn't want to be there. And like that hurts. It hurts my feelings. And
it's kind of one of those things like that, if that were the case, I wish she would have come and talked to me, because then we could salvage our friendship and, maybe find somebody else to stand in for, maid of honor spot.
Yeah.
Or bridesmaid spot.
So I was like feeling all of these feelings of frustration with her, and I hadn't told her yet. I had vented to another friend, but the reason why I wasn't telling her is because the way that she had reacted to my wedding during my wedding planning process, like kind of tainted the wedding planning process for me. And there was another instance also I forgot to mention that where like she had called me a bridezilla over these books that I had made, and I had made like little booklets that had like nail and hair inspo and like little jobs for like the bridesmaids to do, and like they were not serious jobs. It wasn't supposed to be taken seriously, and she took it seriously. And like the job that I had for her was to take my phone and help me get like TikTok content or like Instagram photos or whatever. And when she saw that that was her job, she reached out to me and was like, I thought you hired a photographer for this, and like it just kind of seems like you're wanting free content from me. And I was like, I don't want you to like edit videos. Like, can you just like hang on to my cell phone and take a couple of pictures that I can post on Insta like while I'm waiting for photos? And I thought that was like really like straight. I was like, it's not supposed to be that serious. Like I don't want you to edit a bunch of TikToks. I don't want you to like put filters on things, and like, no, just like, can you like keep track of my phone for me that day?
Yeah.
And like these jobs that I had asked the bridesmaids to do were like all very like, one of them for one of the girls was for her to like check in photos and make sure nobody was wearing hair ties on the wrist, like totally unserious things. But she called me a bridezilla over it, and it really hurt my feelings, and it like made me almost like not excited for my wedding. And I can see from her perspective like how it could be misconstrued, and she was like, this almost seems like demanding, like you made these books with jobs, but they were just supposed to be like, I'm a very atypical person, and they were just supposed to be like another form of organization. And like her point was kind of like, I've never had to help in a wedding, I've only just shown up and looked pretty. And she had like said she's been in like all of these weddings as bridesmaids, and like she's never had to help, she just shows up and looks pretty.
I don't know a whole lot about weddings, and I don't know a whole lot about like that culture of bridesmaids or anything like that, but from what I've gathered, and I could be wrong, but from what I've gathered, if you agree to be a bridesmaid / maid of honor, that means you're part of the bridal party that helps with these things.
Yeah, that's also like what I understood about weddings. But I also like kind of had to explain like, because one of the things the bridesmaids and groomsmen like helped set up between the ceremony and the reception. And I had kind of told them, like if I had extra money to hire additional help to do this, I would. But the venue doesn't do it for us, and I don't have anybody to help.
Yeah.
At that point, it was like also kind of a cost thing. And like, you guys are my friends. Like, I'm going to be taking photos with my family. Can you just throw it together for me,
Oh, because Haley was missing because she was part of the bridal party.
So there were all these frustrating things, but because of the way that she had behaved during my wedding planning process, I did not want to talk to her about it and potentially ruin her wedding planning process. So my wedding was in April, her wedding was in September, and I wanted to wait until after she came back from her honeymoon to just be like, hey, these things happen, and like it really kind of hurt my feelings.
Right. And you also at the same time have had a little bit of rough patches with one of your other people in your bridal party, which you were able to squash with them and talk out. So I believe that like you could have had that conversation and talked it out at the right time. Yeah,
there was another person in my bridal party that caused mad drama, which is like a whole other story for a different day. I squashed it, we really did, and she came back and like apologized and was like I didn't know this about weddings, and like
right, because after that, she saw how much you helped with hers.
And
she was like, "Yep, actually, you did a whole lot, and I'm sorry."
Yeah, so I was in her bridal party for her wedding, which was also in September, and she was like, "Seeing now how much you've done for my wedding, like I apologize for how I acted during your wedding," kind of a thing. So her and I were able to squash it. So anyway, so Morgan's bachelorette party is in, I think, July. It's the same weekend as the Taylor Swift concert. And mind you, like this entire year, even though it's the year that I'm getting married, I'm going through things in life that are like hard to describe. And I told you about this earlier, that I was like ready to end my life subscription. I was just done. I was severely depressed. I had bridesmaids call me a bridezilla, and I just like, I felt so bad about myself. I was struggling with my weight. This is something that we've talked about before, is that like I've struggled with some severe eating disorders for like 15, almost 20 years now. And last year, I think because of like my wedding and the way that like the bridal industry operates, I was having such a hard time with my body image. And every day I woke up just ready to like, again, just, you know, cut the cord and be done. And so I was not in a good place mentally. And I was just really trying to like go through the motion. I remember even like waking up the day of my wedding and being like, I could really just get hit by a car today instead. Like it was so bad. And that's like not to say that I didn't want to get married or like don't love my husband, but I just mentally, I cannot describe like how bad it was. And medications were not working and therapy was not working, and we were trying different things, and I was going different places, and I was seeing all of these doctors, and it's not for like a lack of trying to like get better, it just wasn't working.
Right.
So her bachelorette party rolls around, and there's one activity that like I kind of don't have the money for, and it starts kind of in the middle of the day, and I don't have the PTO for it either. And last minute I'm kind of like, hey, can I meet you guys after, because I don't have the PTO to leave for work and I don't have the money. She really kind of like threw my bachelorette party in my face, and she's like, you know, I spent a week and $1,000 in Florida for your bachelorette party, and you couldn't come up with this money for mine. And I was like, fair, I have had like, you know, so many months to come up with the money, but you know, things just came up. I had like a lot of medical expenses, and like when it was your turn to come to my bachelorette party, like not only did I offer to pay for you, but also like I didn't even spend $1,000.
Yeah.
And my bachelorette party was from Friday to Sunday, why you were there for a week because you were there to see your other friend. And so like that, it kind of hurt that she had like thrown it in my face that way, because I didn't even spend $1,000.
Right. Yeah.
And then like I had kind of been telling her, you know, where I was at mentally, and you know, some friends just don't know how to react. Like when I was being so blatantly honest about how ready I was to just, again, jump in front of a car. And some people don't necessarily know how to react to that, and that's no fault of their own. I could just tell that she was like tired of hearing it. And she had said things like, honestly, like I think you need to consider switching up your meds. And I was like, well, we're already trying that. And I think you need to go like talk to your therapist. And like, well, I am doing that. And like, but I need you to know like where my head is at. So this bachelorette party rolls around, and she kind of made me feel bad about like the money thing. And so the activity, I ended up leaving work and not using PTO. I just took the unpaid hours and I put the activity on a credit card. And I went, and I remember standing outside of the venue and thinking, I'm about to go like be with like 7 very beautiful women who are all like 6 sizes smaller than me, and like again like struggling with that eating disorder. And I remember having like an anxiety attack over the phone, because I start like hyperventilating about how I'm about to spend an entire weekend with people who are like smaller than me and prettier than me, and like on top of like, again, I cannot reiterate just how bad my mental health was, and that's not their fault.
No, yeah, of course.
But I was just trying to focus on how I was going to get through the weekend and keep it to myself, and like
put on a happy face.
Put on a happy face and let it be about her. And so like before I go into the venue for this activity, I'm like hyperventilating, trying to calm myself down, because I know I'm gonna have all these thoughts. And so I do what I think is a good job, and I am just like, I'm being quiet and I'm observing, and I'm like letting them have fun and be happy and laugh and be excited. And you know, I'm just like watching, and you know, I take a couple pictures, and like I just really am trying to keep it to myself. And then the next day is the Taylor Swift concert, and I go to the concert and like enjoy it to the best of my ability. And then I just say like, you know, I'm kind of not doing okay, and like I'd like to go home a day early. And then next thing I know, I go home, and the next thing I know, one of the girls has removed me off of Instagram and has like me unfollow her as well. And then I start seeing Morgan like subtweeting things like, what is it, like something along the lines of like, getting older is realizing that not everything is about you, things along that line. And I'm like, oh no, like did something happen? So I text her and I'm like, hey, are you okay? Like what's going on? And she's like, I don't want to talk about it. And I was like, did I do something wrong? Like, I hope everything's okay. Like, I would be really upset if, like, I upset you. And she was like, I said I don't want to talk about it, and I want you to respect that boundary. And I just was like, okay. So then I get a text from her sister, and her sister's like, "Oh, I'll shed some light for you if you want." And that was my first mistake, is that I should not have talked to her sister.
Yeah.
I should have just waited to talk to her. And so she like tells me that like the way that I behaved was really uncomfortable, and people were asking questions, and I was like, "Whoa, I was just like trying to like sit back and like let you have a good time." And she's like, if you were really in that bad of a headspace, you should have told her. She would have understood. And I was like, I did tell her, and I showed up anyways. And it just kind of like became this like big back and forth thing. And I was like, look, like there were several things that I was like triggered by, and so I was just trying to like remove myself and not make my triggers your problem. And like, I'm so sorry, like that was not the intent. I was really just trying to like bottle my stuff up so that like everyone could have a good time. And it just got so out of hand, and I was like, and like I had offered to have this conversation over a phone call because texts get misconstrued.
Oh yeah, especially when you can't hear like fluctuation in somebody's voice, and like, did they mean this in like a bitchy way, or are they actually being sincere? Like you can't hear that in a text.
And then, but then she said no, she wasn't available for a phone call, so this is happening over text. And one of the things that I had said was like, one of the girls at dinner had like kind of like grabbed her belly, and like I like kind of understood that to be like a body image thing, and I felt triggered by that. And so I got up and like I went to the restroom, and when I told her that, she was like, how dare you, like if someone's struggling with their body, it was like one of their little sisters, and she's like, you should have said something to one of us. And I was like, no, she was talking to Morgan, like she was already talking to Morgan when it happened. And so like my takeaway was that like maybe I saw something and like totally misconstrued it, and that's my fault. But like that's what my takeaway was at the time. Right. And I just was trying not to make it their problem. And she was like, how dare you? And then she was like, you're lying about that. And then it got so bad. And then I started seeing all of these like subtweets about like what I now knew were about me. My phone is blowing up, and I can't look on social media, and I'm crying. So I turned my phone off for like 3 days, and nobody can get a hold of me because like I just am in this like visceral state of panic. And finally, like I turned my phone back on, and I have a text from Morgan, and it says, I think maybe we should take a break for a little while. And I just said, I agree. So a week goes by, and then I get another text from Morgan, and it says, I've just heard about how you were talking about me during your engagement, and I think it's best if you don't come to my bridal shower and you don't come to my wedding. And like in my head, she found out like about my first draft. She found out that I was upset about the things that happened during my wedding, and now she's upset and she's uninvited me from her wedding. And I was so upset in that moment that I didn't even reply. So this is in July. The wedding's in September. In the meantime, I'm going to like a bachelorette party for that other friend. So I am waiting for my flight home from this other bachelorette party, and I get a text from Morgan, and it says, I uninvited you for my wedding because I got told that you called me a crackhead who spends too much money on drugs, and I thought you needed the closure. And I was like so flabbergasted. Like it's almost like...
Did you ever find out who told her you said that?
No. I have no idea.
I'm always like, oh, tell me the source so that we can like hash this out, figure it out.
Yeah, I was like, what I had said to her was like, first of all, like I stopped needing your closure when you just uninvited me with, or no. She had unfriended me also. Like they actually blocked me. Her and her sister had blocked me on Instagram, blocked me on Facebook, like blocked me on all social media. So I was like, I stopped needing that closure when you blocked me on everything without so much of as a conversation. Like we've been friends for 14 years. And I was like, I've never said that about you. And so one thing that you'll learn later in the podcast is that like my mother, when she passed away from a drug overdose. So like calling someone like a crackhead is not, that's
not in your vocabulary.
It's like a sensitive topic for me. Yeah, unless we're talking about like a comedy sketch where like the term is used, like it's not like, I don't know, or I think like on occasion I've used like the term for myself, like when you say like, oh, I've got crackhead energy today, like I've said that, but like I wouldn't just blatantly call someone a name. It's just like name calling is not what I do. And I also don't know like how or why that would have been applicable to her. She doesn't have that kind of energy. And so I was like, this is not true. And I don't know who told you that, but like, it's just not true. And she's like, well, unfortunately, I don't believe you because I've heard you talk shit about like other people before, like the other bridesmaid. She's like, you called her a shitty maid of honor. And she sent me screenshots where she's having this conversation with the maid of honor. And I was like, again, like I was venting to you about that. And her and I have now had that conversation and we've squashed it. And she was like, well, are you sure? Because here's screenshots of when I told her and she didn't seem to believe you. And I look at the screenshots and like maid of honor is kind of like, oh, well, what else does she say about me kind of a thing. And so in the meantime, I'm texting my maid of honor and I'm like, hey, I just got these screenshots from Morgan and like, you know, like I just need to know, like, are you okay? Are we okay? I had literally just left her bachelorette party and she was like, no, I kind of knew that she was just like starting shit because you and I already had a conversation and some of the things that she said like didn't make sense. And so she was like, I was just trying to like see what else she would say kind of a thing, which like that, it just ended up being like more drama. But, so I was like, well, her and I have had a conversation about this and we squashed things. And like, I actually just spent the weekend with her and we're completely fine. And like, it looks like you were trying to blow up my friendship though. And like, I kind of don't appreciate that. And I was like, Morgan, I did not call you those things. And she just started saying like, LOL, liar. And then she's like, you know what? You have not been a good friend to me. Like you were jealous. There was, you know, villainizing jealousy. And then she's like, you were jealous and you behaved so poorly at my bachelorette party. And I was like, you know, I'm really sorry. I just was like, I cannot explain to you like how bad my headspace was. And she was like, you use your mental health as an excuse for everything. And I was like, our mental health is the deciding factor in how our days are going to go. And so like,
when you are mentally unwell in that moment, number one, it's hard to even point that out for yourself in that moment of like, oh, right now I'm not doing good. Like, right. Like, even though you can say like, you know, I'm not doing okay. Like I'm having these like suicide ideations or whatever the case may be. When you are inside of it, nothing you're thinking about is I'm unwell. Here's the steps I want to take. Here's the steps I need to take. Here's what's going to make me feel like you're doing your best.
Well, like, I think there's also a stark difference between like being mentally unwell and like doing nothing about it.
Like, you were trying to do so much about it.
I was trying everything. I was going to therapy. I was getting my meds checked. I was going and seeing doctors, and I also still was like exercising like 5 or 6 days a week. You know, I was like trying to do things that I enjoyed, but like just nothing was like pulling me out of it. And then on top of this, like I'm having this like fight with a friend that I've had for 15 years, and like that's making things so much worse. And also, like, in the meantime, she posted things, like, on her Facebook. I had people texting me being like, Morgan said this, and I think it's about you. And, like, you know, the people who were, like, mutual friends were like, I saw this on social media, and, like, oh, my God, are you okay?
Yeah.
And one thing that Morgan had posted was, like, nobody fucks with my family. And I'm assuming that it had something to do with, like, the thing with her sister, like, grabbing her tummy. And in my head, I was like, I was not trying to fuck with your family. I think I was just misinterpreting something because my body image was so bad. So I'm having this conversation with her, and I'm like, yes, my mental health was bad, but like I cannot explain to you like how bad I was. So suicidal. And her response to that in all capital letters was, so what? And like, I'm sitting in the airport and I'm waiting for my plane and I'm crying. And I see the words, so what, pop up on my screen. And I like take a deep breath and I type, okay, send. And then I type, please stop contacting me, send. And then I blocked her number. And like that for me, like it was heartbreaking to do, but it was like, I just told you that like my life was on the line, and your response to that is, so what? And then later was someone pointed out to me, again, someone who she had not blocked, said that the same day that had happened, Morgan had posted something on Twitter about, you know, bitching about people who use their mental health as an excuse for everything. And then like 3 tweets after that, it said something along the lines of, I'm severely bipolar, take everything I say with a grain of salt. And when this person told me that she had seen that, that was so telling for me.
Yeah.
It's like what we talked about in your episode, that like we don't give people grace for things that we would expect for ourselves.
Yes.
So, like, you're telling me that I'm using my mental health as an excuse for everything, and then you post, I'm severely bipolar, take everything I say with a grain of salt. Like, you're literally using your disability as an excuse to just say whatever you want.
Yeah.
And so that, and that was, I want to say September of last year. So we're coming up on like 8-ish months, and that's where that left off. And I never really got closure from it, and I don't know that I ever will. But I think the "so what" in capital letters like was my closure, and that's how like that friendship of 14 years ended. And it was visceral, and it was traumatic, and it really kind of just like dug my depression like further into the ground, and like for the rest of the year. And like there are still days like I still have dreams about this person.
Yeah.
I have dreams that like, you know, they reach out and like want to squash things, and like moving forward, like the way that it ended was bad, and I still like I have so much love for them. And what she had said was, she had said something before it all ended. She had said, like, I love you dearly, Mandy, but I just can't have that kind of person in my life. But then like when she ended the conversation with "so what," like I was like, that's not someone who loves me.
Yeah.
And so like that, yeah, it's like we said, it was so much worse than any romantic breakup that I had ever been through, because I had poured like 14 years of my life into a friendship with this person, and just like that, it's gone. And like not only is the friendship gone, but they basically told me that like she did not care that I was just ready to end it all.
It's always hard, because I think that one of the things that I sit back and really think about whenever things like that happen is like, were there signs of things? Should I have noticed something before? Should I have reached out before? Like it's always the like hindsight's 2020, like shoulda, woulda, coulda kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what I have learned, it all kind of just like boils down to is communication.
Mm-hmm.
So had we been better at communicating, maybe things would not have gotten this far. All that to say, I do think that like you did your best to communicate. You were like, I'm not very present right now in my head. I'm going to do my best.
Mm-hmm.
I will put this on a credit card and try to be there for you. I misinterpreted something, and you even said like, I'm so sorry, like I misinterpreted that. And it's like, again, speaking to your point of like extending that grace to people, and just like doing your best to meet them where they're at. And like, even if, you know, in that case, she would have just come back to you and been like, hey, listen, like, I understand that all these things are happening right now. I cannot be the friend there for you right now. I'm so sorry. Let's pick this back up. But like, communicate. Say that.
Well, like one of the things that her sister had said when she and I were talking was that like, kind of like everybody has things going on. She was like, Morgan has this going on with this, and I have this going on with this person, and like everybody has things going on right now. And I'm like, yes, that's true. Everybody is fighting an invisible battle, but not to like be the butt person, but like sometimes you just cannot put it away. Sometimes it is so loud in the forefront of your mind that you just cannot put it down. And as hard as I tried, I could just not put it down. And I would love the opportunity to apologize to her for that. Like I really truly from the bottom of my heart am sorry about where my mental space was, because it was not good, and I was not being the best friend that I could be, and I know that. But I like I said earlier, like when all you have to give is 10%, then you're still giving 100. Mm-hmm. And I really in that moment just felt like, you know, I'm giving this everything I can, and I'm going to be quiet, and like, because I cannot get it. Like, you're all sitting here at a table making friendship bracelets right now, and my mind is just going, walk outside and jump in front of a car. Like, how do you put that away?
Right.
And if given the opportunity, you know, like I still would apologize. I do feel bad for how things ended, but also at the same time, you know, it's just kind of one of those situations where like, you just like, I'll never get closure from it. It's what is the saying? Something about like apologies you'll never receive. It's okay to still be sad about apologies you'll never receive.
I think a good point that you made in the previous recording that we lost is that you're always going to be that villain in somebody's story.
We did talk about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
we talked about being the villain in someone else's story, and like when someone tells you something about me, believe them.
Believe that.
And that's okay. If I have to be the villain in your story, that's okay, because I know what I was going through. And like, even though I am the villain to you, like, you are not a villain to me. I'm going to extend you the grace that I did not get. That you are doing the best with the information that you have, and the best that you have with the information that you have is to be that angry at me. That's okay.
One of the things that really I hate that people sort of, I guess, use as an excuse for people is we all don't experience the same things in the same capacity, in the same space. So take something remedial, right? Take something like, oh, well, whenever I went to this library, I thought the people there were not very accommodating or pretty cool. And then somebody's like, I've been there like 5 times and I thought they were great.
Yeah.
That's great that was your experience.
Mm-hmm.
You don't set the precedent for universal experience for all of us.
It's like we said, like, a big theme on this podcast is going to be that 2 things can be true at once. And like 2 things can be true. Like, I can be the villain in Morgan's story, but I can also know that I was experiencing something that I should have had more support for.
And to speak further to that, like, for her sister to sit there and be like, Morgan's going through this and I'm going through this and we can put it aside, and it's like, that's great that that's your experience right now. I'm so happy that you are able to work through that right now. That is great that that's what's happening in your life right now.
Mm-hmm.
In mine right now, I'm barely keeping my head above water and I don't even want to wake up tomorrow, but I'm gonna fucking try, you know? And so never approach somebody with well, I didn't have, that's great. That doesn't help. What are you contributing to this conversation?
Yeah.
Making me feel worse that you're great? Great, I'm happy for you.
Making me feel worse that, like, you can put your shit aside, but I can't. And, like, so I think that's, like, the big takeaway from this episode is that, like, you have to understand that, like, 2 things can be true at once. And, like, there are going to be times where, like, stronger than you are, I need to give you grace for that. But also, like, the fact that this entire friendship ended because someone told her that I called her a crackhead is, like, almost laughable to me. I don't know where she got this information. I don't know.
It's always going to be one of those things. I do want to just, like, before we end, kind of just ask, like, what was a positive thing about this entire experience for you?
That's a hard question. I mean, even now I still look at it negatively. I think the positive thing is that I can still say that, like, I have love for this person, and I hope her wedding was beautiful, and I hope her honeymoon was everything that she wanted it to be, and I hope the rest of her life is good for her. And, like, the positive thing is that, like, I can walk away knowing that, like, I'm the villain in her story, and that's okay. If that's what she needs from me, then I'm at peace with that. Yeah. So
I think a big thing you can pull from this is being okay with non-closure.
Yeah, sometimes you have to be okay with it.
Gradually learning to get there, at least, because that's a hard one. That's a really hard one.
Eventually you'll get there, but, like, sometimes no closure is closure.
Exactly.
So.
No response is a response.
And just remember that if you don't laugh about it,
you'll cry.